The 2025 NBA trade deadline is shaping up to be a rather historic one. I mean, we got guys like Chris Middleton being traded for Kyle Kuzma. Who would have ever thought that? We got De'Aaron Fox being traded to San Antonio, teaming him up with Victor Wembanyama, and that should be a great pairing for about the next decade now. Then of course we got the blockbuster Luka Doncic trade, the Lakers coming out of nowhere to trade Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic, and absolute insanity with that one. We've talked plenty about it. And now we got Jimmy Butler being traded. The trade that many thought would be the highlight of the trade deadline, but now it's kind of the ending of it, and maybe the exclamation point too. And no, it wasn't the Phoenix Suns. Apparently they might trade Kevin Durant. Maybe they will trade him by the time I get this video out, but according to Shams Charania, the Golden State Warriors have traded for Jimmy Butler, bypassing the Phoenix Suns, and not only that, but they have given him a new contract too, which is another problem entirely, and we'll talk about that in a bit here. But for the trade package they gave up for Jimmy Butler, they trade away Andrew Wiggins, Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroder, Kyle Anderson, and one protected first-round draft pick. Though not entirely to the Miami Heat, this ended up becoming a 5-team trade again, and not only Golden State and Miami are involved in it, but then the Detroit Pistons, Utah Jazz, and the Toronto Raptors, with Lindy Waters and Josh Richardson heading to Detroit, Dennis Schroder heading to Utah. And going back to Golden State here, I'm not sure this is a good trade for them, and in fact, I'm pretty positive that it won't be a good trade for them. They're trading a lot, and I mean a lot, for now 35-year-old Jimmy Butler, 35 going on 36, and I'm not sure what they gave up is worth it, especially when you factor in the new contract they gave him too. Yes, they did give him a new contract, not only that, but a max contract, paying him $121 million over the next 2 years now, and by that time the contract comes to an end, he'll be about 37 and making about $60 million per season. So yeah, probably not a good look for them, and a very bleak outlook for their future in my opinion. But with all of that being said here, could the Lakers be affected by it? I think it might, and we're going to talk about how it affects the Lakers and simply the NBA in general during today's video. And well, to begin, I think the first thing that will be affected by it, and from a Lakers standpoint, will be Jimmy Butler playing in Golden State, who might be their opponent tomorrow night. They are playing them tomorrow night, but will it include Jimmy Butler? That's up for debate here. I mean, Jimmy Butler could be in Golden State right now for all we know. He definitely wants to get as far away as possible with Pat Riley, so I would not rule it out here. You know Jimmy Butler, he might have even known about the trade before this happened, and he might even be in Golden State right now for all we know. But apart from that, I think other teams will be affected by this trade, whether it be another trade coming with it, whether it be the buyout market, or simply the open market. There are plenty of options here for other teams that they might be able to take advantage of, and the Lakers might be one of them too. If we go back to the trade here, there are obviously a lot of moving parts. Not only Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins, the highlights of the trade, but obviously plenty of guys included with them too. You got role players like Josh Richardson, Lindy Waters, Kyle Anderson, and then former Laker Dennis Schroder, the guy that many Laker fans will probably highlight here and definitely want to get back to. Now unfortunately, although they can get him back through a trade, they can't get him back through the buyout market, which might have been the most likely scenario here for a different team, but not the Lakers. Yes, he might have landed with a rebuilding, tanking team, that being the Utah Jazz, and probably makes him a fairly likely buyout candidate, if not a likely trade candidate again. But if he does get bought out, the Lakers can't sign him. Unfortunately, they're not allowed to. Per the new CBA rules, the first apron teams and the second apron teams, of which Lakers are a first apron team, are not allowed to sign a buyout player if their salary is above $12.9 million. And for Dennis Schroder, he is slightly above that amount, unfortunately. Last season they would have been able to. He only made about $12.1 million, but this season his salary went up to about $13 million, aka above that $12.9 million threshold, and therefore making the Lakers ineligible to sign him off the buyout market. But it's not completely ruled out for them getting him here. Obviously they can't through the buyout market, but they could through the trade market. He can be traded again or expanded through the trade. If the Lakers want to get involved in it and make a trade for Schroder, they actually could. They could trade Gabe Vincent with a guy like Christian Wood and draft compensation with them for Dennis Schroder if they wanted to go that route, but that would be the only possibility for them. They can't sign him off the buyout market, and I do gotta make that clear here. And side note, I do feel a little bit bad for Schroder. Yesterday he made a pretty controversial post and kind of related to a team like the Utah Jazz, and now he ended up directly on a team like the Utah Jazz. So I imagine I'll lead to him wanting out, whether it is through the buyout market or through another trade. He very likely will not be staying there for very long. like probably not even showing up in Utah, let alone their practice or team facility, immediately asking out, whether that be through the buyout market or the trade market. And again, if it is through the trade market, the Lakers will have a chance for him, and whether it's trading with a team like Utah or a different team, Dennis Schroder likely is available. Apart from Dennis Schroder though, could anybody else in this trade be headed elsewhere and perhaps be available, either through the buyout market or the trade market? Well, definitely not Jimmy Butler, probably not Andrew Wiggins, but everyone else definitely could be. Whether you're talking about, again, like Dennis Schroder, or maybe Kyle Anderson, PJ Tucker, Lindy Waters, and or Josh Richardson, well, I think all 4 of them could be and probably will be too. Whether it's the buyout market or the trade market again, they'll probably all be available and likely could be going elsewhere. Maybe not all 4 of them, but definitely Kyle Anderson and probably PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker will be an automatic buyout, if not to a different team immediately. And then according to a new report, Kyle Anderson won't be going to Toronto. He'll be staying in Miami or either going to a different team thereafter, but he probably won't be staying there for very long. Obviously, they didn't really want him in the trade, or else they would have gotten him initially. Now they're kind of stuck with him, and they'll probably try to trade him again or expand this trade to trade him to a different team. Whether that does end up being the Toronto Raptors or not, maybe a different rebuilding team, but they obviously don't really want him. So either they'll lead to a buyout or another trade after this one, and maybe for the right price or simply for a veteran minimum contract, he might be worth taking a look at. Now, we're not talking about the best player in the world here, but definitely a versatile defender, a guy that can match up with pretty much every position on the court, especially in a small ball lineup, is quick enough to match up with guards despite being called slow-mo, is pretty laterally quick despite not being very vertically quick or up and down quick. He can defend 1 through 5 at times, and definitely 1 through 4, at the bare minimum 2 through 4, is a good defender, this season having about a plus 2.2 defensive box plus minus rating. On his career has won a plus 2.5, and that's really damn good. Anything above plus 0.0 is actually pretty good, and anything above plus 1 is very good. So we're talking about a very effective and good defender, and again a very versatile defender at that. Now the problem that comes with him does happen to be 3-point shooting at times, and overall offensive contribution and production. Not the best scoring threat, only averaging about 5.5 points per game this season in 15 minutes per game, only shooting about 36.5% from 3. Not bad, but a low volume and not a very reliable 3-point shooter. Last season shot 22.9% from 3, the season before that one 41%, the season 2 prior to that one 28.2%, so you never really know what you might get with Kyle Anderson. Can knock down the occasional 3-point shot, but primarily effective from his defense and then playmaking ability. Has been kind of a point forward at times and does offer value in that regard. So maybe for the right price, and especially for a veteran minimum contract, I would take a look at signing him. Other than those 2 though, meaning Dennis Schroder and Kyle Anderson, they're the only 2 we're taking a look at through the trade. Obviously Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins won't be available, and I'm not going after PJ Tucker, not going after Lindy Waters or Josh Richardson, so only Dennis Schroder and Kyle Anderson. But that's not the end of it. Like I often talk about, and like I did talk about after the De'Aaron Fox trade, the teams that aren't involved in the trade, especially rebuilding ones, often are a little bit more eager and more willing to make a trade after this one, and especially after not being involved in a trade like this one. After seeing it and the draft compensation they might have been able to get, they're often a little bit more eager and willing to make a trade, and especially with a contending team. So whether that be a team like the Charlotte Hornets, the Brooklyn Nets, if the Lakers make another trade with them, or any other rebuilding team for that fact, maybe a team like Toronto, who again were initially involved in this trade despite later backing out, initially taking back Kyle Anderson, and that did show they were willing to take back a veteran player, likely for a 2nd round draft pick or 2, they likely would be willing to do it again for the right price. So I'd call them up, definitely call up a team like the Charlotte Hornets. Once again, they weren't involved in the big trade that went down, but according to rumors and reports, they're more than willing to be that kind of team. The team that takes back money through a trade, the team that takes back a veteran player through a trade, a bad contract through a trade, in exchange for draft picks or simply a young player in return. So I'd call them up. They have about $14.4 million of cap space below the first apron, and are probably very eager to make a trade and use that salary cap space to take back a bad contract or a player that a team doesn't want in return for a draft pick or 2. So I'd keep them in mind, the Toronto Raptors in mind, the Brooklyn Nets in mind, a team like the Washington Wizards in mind, and every other rebuilding team for that fact. And well, to sum it up, when a big trade like this happens, it often affects the entire NBA and often in ways that we really don't see coming. Whether it's another trade happening after that one, a guy getting bought out, or multiple players being bought out, or whatever it might be, it's very likely not the end of it, It might take another week, another 2 weeks to see the end of it, but the after effects of a big trade like this are not completely shown and we don't find out about them for quite some time after the trade itself. And with that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about the Jimmy Butler trade and how the Lakers might be affected or directly benefit from that trade too? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. And if you enjoyed the video, then I'll greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.